Hello, and thank you for this workshop that's specifically about the capital project application through the Neighborhood Investment Program. We're going to dive right into this workshop. Today, we're going to give you a high-level overview of the Energize program for anybody who is not familiar with what we do. Talk about the basics of the Neighborhood Investment Program. We'll dive a little bit into the ZOOMGRANTS software system, which I know a lot of you are familiar with, but we want to make sure that everybody feels comfortable using it. And then we will talk specifically about the capital project application. I'm going to wrap it up with a few things about the mini grant program, but this workshop is not going to focus on any of the details of that mini grant program. So, what is Energize Our Neighborhoods? We are a collaborative team that works with neighborhoods all across our city to look at projects and programs that neighborhood residents want to see happen and working with them to make those things a reality within their neighborhoods. We have 5 key elements that we focus on. The first one is planning. So anybody who has gone through a neighborhood planning process recently is very familiar with this, but looking at, engaging people to help develop the policies and the high-level goals that will help shape development in their neighborhoods. Looking at implementation, how can those projects and your ideas and make them happen within your neighborhoods? The Neighborhood Investment Program is our key method of being able to implement those projects that neighborhoods bring to us. We also do a lot of work around capacity building. So what kinds of workshops we offer, the kinds of resources and tools and guides we produce are all driven by requests from neighborhoods and from residents all across our community who reach out to us and say, hey, we want to learn more about this or that topic, and then we look at what we can do to provide that information to the community. We also like to help you celebrate your neighborhood. So we have a block party trailer, we support community events, and occasionally when we are back to normal times outside of the pandemic, we like to host community events as well. So really looking at anything that we can do to make our community a vibrant and fun place to be and help neighbors connect with each other. Our team also supports our neighborhood associations, the administration of those associations, helping to form new ones and providing resources and support for our neighborhood association boards and the volunteers that work with them. This is our team. I know you know many of us already likely, but Nikki and myself are our full-time Energize program staff. And then Leon, Deanna, and Ethan work very closely with us on a daily basis, providing subject matter expertise from their worlds. We're all within the Planning and Development Services Department. And we all fulfill slightly different roles within that, but coming together to work on all aspects of things that make our neighborhoods great. So, the Neighborhood Investment Program. Generally speaking, this is funding for capital projects. Those are big construction things that happen within our neighborhoods. So whether it is a playground or a walking path or some type of other connectivity improvement, anything that is permanent and in the ground is usually something that we can consider for funding through this program. The other thing that we fund that is not a capital construction project, but that is neighborhood plans and things that support our neighborhood associations in that respect. Only recognized neighborhood associations in good standing can apply for these projects. That means that other community groups need to work with their neighborhood associations if they have a project in mind. There are some requirements for this, and we'll get into slightly more detail on these later, but the projects have to be located on public property. They have to be free and accessible to the public, and they have to comply with all ADA accessibility requirements and be in compliance with other public agency plans as well. We use ZOOMGRANTS for this program. That means all applications are submitted through ZOOMGRANTS. We provide notifications in ZOOMGRANTS. We will also do that directly to you as applicants. And then we use ZOOMGRANTS on an ongoing basis for some of our other city grant applications as well. So this is a great program to become familiar with if you are not already. It also keeps an archive of all of the applications that you have submitted in the past, whether they have been awarded funding or not. So it's a nice way for associations to be able to keep track of that history and to be able to access the information that you have previously to the city for applications. We also use ZOOMGRANTS to handle reimbursement requests, but that's only for the ACT mini grants. For capital projects, we will handle all of the financial side of things, so you don't have to worry about submitting invoices for those kinds of projects. To access Zoom Grants, you can go to www.zoomgrants.com, or you can access it through the Energize Our Neighborhoods website. That web address is energizeourneighborhoods.org. This is what the Zoom Grants application will look like, the first landing page that you'll get to if you access it through the city's website, so through the Energize Our Neighborhoods website. Right now, it shows that there are no programs available to apply for because that application hasn't opened yet. When it does open, though, you will see it pop up here, and there will be a button on the right-hand side that says Apply Now or Start Application. Clicking that button will take you directly into the application. From time to time, you will also see other grant opportunities here. It might be a program run through Arts and History, or potentially from our Community Development Block Grant Program, who frequently offers funding to community groups who provide public services to our community. So several applications may also be found here. Feel free to take a look at them. If you're interested, feel free to apply if you meet those qualifications. This landing page also allows you to log directly into Zoom Grants here. So you'll see over there on that right-hand side, you can either enter your existing username and password, or if you've never used Zoom Grants before and your neighborhood association has never submitted an application in the past, you can create a new Zoom Grants account here as well. Once you've logged in, this is what you should see. There is a section over on the left-hand side for incomplete applications. So if you've started an application, you don't have to finish it all in one day. You can come back and work on it later. Until you hit submit on that application, you'll find it there on the left-hand side under incomplete applications. On the left-hand side, you'll also see ones that you have submitted, and they won't be in there for a super long time. Those are only for ones that have been submitted but haven't had any decisions made yet. So every year, once you hit submit, you'll see your application there in that pending section until June or July when we make final funding decisions and announcements. You can also see over on the right-hand side, approved and declined applications. So that's where you can see that history of everything you've submitted. Even if it did not get awarded funding, Zoom Grants still keeps a copy of that application so that you can come back to it and reference it in the future if you need. Okay, just a few reminders about Zoom Grants for everybody. Most of our associations have reached a point where they have established a generic username and password for Zoom Grants. This is something we recommend all associations do and continue to use once they have it set up. That way, all of the applications that your association has submitted over the years are stored in one place. If each person from the association starts their own Zoom Grant account separately and works on applications separately, you'll have those applications scattered across all of those different accounts. We can fold them all together if you would like. That is easy to do, very simple. Just send us an email and I can have that done for you. But we really recommend using your generic email and a login there. That way you can keep everything all together. Also, if you're going to submit more than one application, which you are absolutely welcome to do, please make sure that you hit start a new application and that you don't overwrite work that you've already put into an application that you started. It's should be a big button up there on says start new application. Make sure that you're giving it a different title, and then that way when you start working on the narrative components, make sure you're not erasing things that are in there and starting over. One thing that we do recommend you do is to work on those narrative pieces of your application in a program like Microsoft Word, any type of word processing program, just because it's a little easier to keep track of things, to see how your narrative is flowing together, and it's easier to go back and edit components that way. Once you have a final product that you're happy with, it's pretty simple to copy that in Word and then paste it into your Zoom Grants application. One thing to keep in mind is that formatting does not show up in your Zoom Grants application. The only way to separate information is by using a hard return and starting a new. So if you have written a beautiful application that has bullet points, it has italicized pieces or bold components to it, please know that none of those will come through in your application. It's best to just keep it really simple, write in paragraphs of text. Don't plan to make things bold or italic. Don't use a bunch of fancy formatting because unfortunately it doesn't show up. And when it all gets removed in Zoom Grants, it can make it pretty hard for our project manager team to read and to kind of follow along. So it's best to keep it as simple as possible. Also nice to know on your end as applicants that ZoomGrants saves everything as you go along. So if you write a whole bunch of narrative in there, that's great. As soon as you click outside of that box, it will save that work. So even if your computer crashes in the middle of what you're working on, there's a decent chance that ZoomGrants has saved everything that's in there so far. You also don't have to worry about looking for a save button. You won't find one. It does it for you automatically. Within the application, there's an opportunity for you to invite collaborators. This is great if you have an outside organization that has reached out to you and wants to work on an application with you. So you as the neighborhood association would start the application, click Start New Application, enter the information about your association, and then you'll find a section where it has an option to invite collaborators. That's where you can submit people's name and an email address and click Invite, and then they will receive a link that goes specifically only to that application. Then they can go in and add things like the narrative or upload documents that they might need as part of the application. They won't be able to access the rest of your applications though. So this is especially good if you have people from another organization that you're going to work with on your application. You can also use it to invite other board members to work on the same application with you as well. You can upload almost any file format into ZoomGrants. I have yet to run into one that it will not accept. So if you have videos of people in your neighborhood talking about your project, please upload those. We would love to see that. Any other types of things that you might have, whether it's a PDF document, an Excel spreadsheet, a Word document, photo files, anything like that can be uploaded into the system. And those go a long way in helping us understand your project, the need in your community, and helping project managers have everything that they need to look at to make decisions about your project. And finally, ZoomGrants allows you to edit your application all the way up until the hard deadline. So that deadline every year is January 31st at midnight. You can submit your application anytime before then. So let's say you have things all squared away, you're ready to go on January 10th. You hit that submit button, and then on January 12th, somebody reaches out to you with one final letter of support. You can still go back in and add that into your application. You can change anything in the application that you need to. You can add to it. You can take parts out. You can do any of that editing all the way up until January 31st at midnight. At that point, the application locks and you cannot make any changes past then. All right, we're going to get a little bit into the policies about this program. Like I said before, you have to be an active registered neighborhood association to apply. Other community groups, if they reach out to the city looking for funding for a project, will be directed to contact you as neighborhood association representatives to get approval for the project. That means that your board will have to vote for that project and support another organization applying underneath your name. This happens frequently though, so if a group does reach out to you, please don't panic. There is no need for alarm, and we are happy to help walk you through that process if you have any questions. All of these projects have to be located on public property. That doesn't have to be City of Boise property. That could be property that belongs to the school district. It could be property that belongs to another public agency like the state of Idaho or the Ada County Highway District. Any of those other public agencies' property is fair game. If it is not public property and it belongs to a private individual or a business, you will have to obtain in writing a commitment from that person or company that they will provide us with a permanent easement for that space. That letter of commitment for that easement needs to be part of your application. If we don't see that in your application and your project is located on private property, your application will not be considered for funding. All of these projects will be managed by a city project manager. They will be assigned to your project based on what your project is, and that way we can match up their subject matter expertise with your project. I have all the project manager information later on in this presentation. I will pause on that slide, that way you can document it all. And this slide deck for this presentation will also be available, so you'll have all of that information. That project manager will help you with a lot of aspects of your application, including the budget, developing all of those things that you might need to take into consideration to include in the narratives, and really helping you step by step through this process. Usually we ask that projects be completed within 3 years of the funding approval. We understand sometimes things come up and that is not feasible, but as often as possible, we would like to see them wrapped up within that 3-year time frame. You can apply for as many projects as you want. It's really up to you and your neighborhood association's bandwidth for creating applications and developing all of those materials. One thing to keep in mind is that this program does have a limited budget. So if you apply for $600,000 worth of projects, please know that you definitely will not get all of them approved. Every year we've had at least double the amount of requests for projects as the funding that we've had available to be able to provide. Unfortunately, that means that we do have to decline a lot of projects every year. So please just take that into consideration. It doesn't mean it was a bad application. It just means that we weren't able to say yes to everything. And of course, your project must apply with or comply with plans that affect your area with our comprehensive plan. If you have a neighborhood plan, it has to be in alignment with that. Other plans that you might need to review and reference might be Ada County Highway District plans, A.C.T. They have bike and pedestrian plans. They have capital improvement plans. Sometimes it might be a cultural plan or a specific area plan. There's a whole library of all of these plans within ZOOMGRANTS. There are links to all of them, and hopefully that helps you be able to find what you should be referencing somewhat easier. We can also help with this process if you're not sure what you should be looking at or the information that you should be planning to reference. And finally, all of these projects need to be accessible to everybody in our community. So let's talk a little bit about the project. Before you get too far into this process, please consider how you are involving people in the community in the development and design of your ideas. So we've seen a lot of neighborhoods who have used surveys in the past or had big meetings. I realized during the pandemic that's not as feasible, but any way that you have to gather input from your community, if you can provide that in your application to show why you're coming to us with this project, it's immensely helpful for our project management team to be able to understand the reasoning behind the need for your project. So using surveys to ask people what they are most passionate about or what improvements they want to see in your neighborhood. Or if you have several projects that you're considering, put it out to vote through a SurveyMonkey or at a Zoom meeting. Have the community weigh in and then show us how and when you've done that and what the response from the community was. This is a really important part of these projects because we want to make sure that the projects that get approved are serving real community needs and that they are going to be things that are valued by as many people as possible and that are going to directly contribute to making your neighborhoods a better place for everybody. Project management. I spoke about this a tiny bit already, but you will have a project manager from the city who is assigned to your project. They must provide a signed project manager approval form in order for your application to be reviewed. If your application does not include that signed form, we won't do the review process. So please make sure that that is included in the uploads for your application. One thing to note, in the past years, we've required that form to be signed before the application was actually submitted. This year, it just needs to be included when you actually hit submit. So there's no prior deadline for that form. But without the form, we will not review your application. Your project budget. This is a big thing because we need to know how much you are asking for. That number needs to be as accurate as possible. We understand that things change. Sometimes construction costs vary widely depending on the time of year when quotes are received, but that's why it's really important to be working with your project manager to develop that budget. They can help provide construction cost estimates. They can help work through the process once your project gets approved for putting it out to bid and getting people on board to do your project. But the development of the budget is a really key element here. So your project manager will provide you further guidance with this. Something that they develop for you. It might be something that they ask you to go and ask for quotes from organizations or businesses in our community, but they will work with you step by step through that. If you have matching funds, that's definitely something that can strengthen your application. It's not required, but if you have any type of support identified by another organization, we certainly want to know about it in your application. So that might be a cash match from a local business or another community organization. It might be a match of volunteer time somebody is going to put towards your project, or it might be a donation either of materials or of professional services. So professional services is probably our most common type of match identified. It's a great way to make use of people who live in your neighborhood. So maybe you already have a landscape architect who lives in your neighborhood who could design some piece of your project for you, or somebody who, you know, runs some type of business that works in a field that you're interested in looking at an application under. Reach out to them. If they're willing to donate that time, that's wonderful and definitely something to include in your application. Please ask them for what they would charge the city or any other client for that work and include that number in your application. Please don't let them tell you, oh, it'll be $100. That very frequently would be a gross underestimate of what their services actually cost. So please ask them, if you were charging your average client, what would this cost? And then include that for us. The other thing that's really important to be considering as you develop your project applications is sustainability and maintenance. We need to know what kind of maintenance work this kind of project that you're applying for might require, and also who would be responsible for maintaining that project long term. Unfortunately, if it is a project that will require a significant amount of maintenance and you don't have a good plan for that identified, it's not likely that your project will get funded. Having that plan, very important. Even if the plan says something along the lines of, this will be an amenity that is added to XYZ park in our neighborhood, and once it is, the Parks and Rec department will take over maintenance of this. That's fine. That's absolutely a great maintenance plan, and it's something that's important for project managers to know about when they are reviewing your application. So please don't assume that we know that. Please don't assume that the city will maintain the project either. So please work through these things with your project manager and share with us your plan. The timeline for your application. So every year we operate on the same timeline. The application itself will open in ZoomGrants on November 1st. Associations then have all of November, December, and January to work on their applications. On January 31st at midnight, the application will close automatically. That is a hard deadline. There's nothing that we can do to reopen the application if you just forgot one little thing. So please make sure that it is all in and submitted by that January 31st deadline. We then take from February up until June to review all of those projects. All the projects are scored, they're reviewed by a team of project managers, and then all of the projects go through several additional layers of vetting, both with department directors and then eventually with our mayor as well. Before any sort of funding announcements can be made, all of those entities have to sign off. So we generally try to get notifications out to all the neighborhood associations by the end of June. And then we do an announcement of what projects will be funded in July. Then, once your project has been announced that it will receive funding, that funding becomes available the following October. So our fiscal year begins October 1st. That's when the funding becomes available, and that is when it can kick off. So again, if your project is awarded funding, your project manager will be in touch. If there are pieces of your project that they can get started without needing any funding, they will likely reach out to you and start that process in August or September. And then as soon as the funding becomes available, they can work on putting projects out to bid or moving forward with other aspects of the project as it depends. Okay, these are the questions within the application. These are the same questions from last year. If you submitted an application in for our FY21 cycle, these should look familiar. If you didn't, I will run through them quickly just to let you know what is there in that application. So first, we need to describe the project. Then we need to know who owns that specific project location, what community need your project will address. There are a lot of different ways that you can identify this need. We would love to see data. We would love to hear community stories and input from surrounding residents and neighbors. Anything along those lines that helps us understand why you're applying for this project. We want to know how your project aligns with existing plans. Again, that's where you can reference that plan library that's within the application. And we want to know how the neighborhood has been involved in the development and design of your project idea. So that's your opportunity to share whether you did a survey or you held open house events or whatever you did to solicit that feedback and input. We want to know who the project will serve and benefit. So if it's going to be a gateway to your neighborhood, we want to know traffic counts for how many people might pass or drive past that every day. If it is a playground, we want to know how many students within that specific age range who would potentially be using that playground. We want to know how many of them live within your neighborhood within a certain walking distance. We also, want to look at any other data sources that you have access to or that you would like to find. We can also try to access them for you if you are unsure how to find the data about your neighborhood. That's something our team is happy to help with, but we're really looking to see that information within your application. We need to know how much your project's going to cost, and if it's going to cost more than $75,000, you need to plan for how we could phase in this project. It's fine if it does exceed $75,000. That doesn't mean it's going to get denied, but we do need to know, if it's going to cost $300,000, do you have a plan to phase it in maybe over 2 years or potentially over 3 years? We also want to know if there are any of those matching funds. We want to see letters of support and commitment from local businesses, other organizations, or those folks within your neighborhood who might be volunteering their time. We'd love to see those letters and understand exactly what that looks like. We also want to know what types of partners might be involved in your project. So who's going to help with the actual implementation? Are there people who are going to be involved long-term, potentially in the sustainability or maintenance of your project? Or people who are going to help fundraise for this project for future years, maybe an expansion. Then the last question in here is that sustainability and maintenance plan for your project and what it's going to look like over the next 10 years. And finally, there is a ranking section at the very bottom. So if you're submitting more than one application, we want to know the priority that this application is within your system. So if you submit 3 applications, each of them should have a different ranking on there, 1, 2, or 3. Finally, at the very end of your application, you'll find a section where you can upload documents. We need to see a few of those that are required, and you won't be allowed to submit your application or it won't be reviewed if those are not included. So we need that project manager approval form. We want to see sign-in sheets if you held an in-person event, or the participant list if you did an online or virtual meeting instead. We need to see a detailed, and we want to see photos or maps of the project site. Unless it is a neighborhood plan, you should have some type of specific location where this will be happening, and we would like to see photos of what it looks like now and where it is on a map specifically. You also have the opportunity to upload a lot of supplemental material into the system. So this is your chance to really share as many details as possible with our team. If you have letters of support, if you have little videos that people have recorded, any sort of budget commitments, photos of the area, any type of site plans. If there's specific equipment that you're requesting to be installed, we want to see the specs and the plans for that equipment as well. Okay, a few considerations. Every year, unfortunately, we cannot say yes to every application, and I always get questions about why an application did not receive funding. So I wanted to share with you a few of the most common things that we run into when we are reviewing applications. The first one is that your application lacks detail. If you have only written 3 sentences in the project narrative, that description, that is not enough. Every single time we look at these project applications, there are a decent number of them that we cannot understand the real value to your neighborhood or why you want a project based on what's included in your application. Within our scoring system, there are a lot of different ways applications earn points. One of them is the quality of your application, and this really speaks to that information that is provided in the narrative. So if you don't know if you have been clear enough, please add more. Just to be very upfront about things, please add more. We have a whole team of project managers who look at these every year. They are not necessarily people who know anything about your project. So to make sure that it is an equitable process, we have your project manager review it, but we also have 2 other individuals from our project manager team review every single application. So 3 people look at them. Those 3 people might come from all 3 different departments, and they may never have heard of your project before. They might not know anything about the location. They might not know anything about your community or what you've worked on in the past, and they might not have the slightest idea about what your project would actually look like if it were to be implemented ahead of time. So please be as detailed as possible. Provide information as if you were writing it for, your great-grandmother or for somebody who really just has never worked in a neighborhood before. If they could understand it, then you're probably in a good place and you've probably provided the right level of detail. Again, documentation is always a challenge within applications, or it can be a challenge. So if you have had people reach out to you, even if it's just an email to your general association email saying, hey, we want this kind of project in our neighborhood, please include those emails as a PDF in your application. Anything that you can do to show us the need within your community or why you have selected the specific project is incredibly helpful to our project manager team. Another thing we run into are people who just reference a plan in general. So Blueprint Boise says that you want vibrant neighborhoods. Yes, it absolutely does say that, but that does not speak to anything about your specific project or how your project would really fit into that broader scope of things. So if you don't know how you should be looking at these plans, or if you don't understand what parts might be pertinent, please reach out to our team and we are happy to help you kind of walk through those plans and understand. We're really looking for pretty specific information here. Like within our neighborhood plan, we talked about wanting to provide better opportunities for people to be outside enjoying recreational amenities. And that is why we are applying for a walking path at this park. That is a good way to reference a plan and provides very specific information that we can come back and look at as well. Another thing to be sure that you are coordinating in your application is that multiple entities will be involved. Make sure they are all aware of your application. Make sure that you've talked to them and said, hey, we're going to reference that you are going to be a part of this project if we get approved for funding. Make sure that everybody is aware of that ahead of time. Really start talking to your project manager now if you have even just a tiny idea about a project, or if you don't know what kind of project might work in your neighborhood. We're also happy to sit down with you and help brainstorm different ideas that might be of value to your neighborhood that you could then take back to other residents and talk to them about. When in doubt, add more, not less. Again, if you only have 3 sentences under any one of those given narrative sections, please consider, think about it from another perspective, or ask a family member to read it and see if they understand what you're asking for, and then add more information if it's not abundantly clear. You don't need to upload a full plan within your application, so I don't need another copy of Blueprint Boise added. We don't need your neighborhood plan added. We have copies of all of those plans. It's sufficient to just reference them within your application to say, in this section of this plan, it talks about X, and that pertains to our project because of whatever those reasons might be. Also, please talk to your neighboring neighborhood associations. So if you are looking at a project that might be right on the boundary between your association and another one, it's a good idea to reach out to that association and make sure that they're not considering applying for a similar project, or just see if there's opportunities for you guys to come an application together potentially. Okay, this is our list of project managers. These are the same folks that have been with this program for quite a while, so you might be familiar with their names. Just very quickly, if you're looking at something in a park or along the Greenbelt, Wendy Larimore is our representative from Parks and Recreation. Zach Pietmeyer works in Planning and Development Services, and he is our transportation planner. So anything that is a sidewalk connectivity project, a pathway project, anything along those lines, Zach would be your go-to person. If you're interested in developing a neighborhood logo or sign toppers or standalone signs in your neighborhood, please reach out to Nikki Drake. In her email, please note that it is N.R. Drake. N. Drake is a lovely gentleman named Neil who also works for the city of Boise, but unfortunately he is not a project manager. So please make sure you get the R in her email address there if you're reaching out to Nikki. If you're interested in a infrastructure kind of project that might involve streetlights or other public works services, Melissa Janusich is our project manager. For neighborhood plans, Deanna Dupuis is our neighborhood planner and can help you with that process and understanding what goes into a neighborhood plan. If you're interested in historic research, Brandy Burns is our city historian and can help support that. And then Carl LeClaire manages our public art program and can help you with all of the details related to a public art project. Finally, I am here. I'm Melinda McGoldrick. If we haven't met, I am here as support for your applications, the process of submitting them, the administration of the program overall, and then of course any tech support that you might need throughout this process. I'm here and happy to help you with those things. Finally, mini grants. Mini grants are now completely separate. They are not part of the Neighborhood Investment Program anymore. They were rebranded. They are now called A.C.T mini grants, and they operate on a rolling application basis now. So right now it is the fall of 2020. If you're watching this in the future, please note that this might not be correct, but as of right now, this application will open on October 15th. And it will close again on January 15th. So if you did not apply for a mini grant in the last round, you have another opportunity to do so. Once that application closes, we'll review, we'll make announcements, and then the application will open back up again in March. So you can see that there. We also have information available on our website more in depth about this program. There is a short webinar that you can watch. I think it's about 28 minutes long. So please feel free to review that if you missed it the first time or need a refresher. We also have a program guide that goes into all of the detail of the mini grant programs. So what kinds of projects are eligible, what kinds of expenses are eligible or ineligible, all the requirements, the dates, all of the submittal process and everything for that is available there. So please go to cityofboise.org/ACT-grants for more information about that. And the link to that webinar is down at the bottom of the page. If you have questions, I realize this is a recorded webinar, so unfortunately we can't do a live Q&A right now, but if you have questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. You can reach me directly at my email, which was on that previous page, or always through the energize@cityofboise email. Someone from our team checks that every single day and they will get back to you as soon as possible. We also have a lot of information on the website, so please take a moment to check that out as well. Thank you so much for joining us today, and I look forward to seeing what kinds of applications you all are thinking about this year. Thank you.